Hello, my name is Caleb Smith. I am the principal at Newton High School, and I'm going to do my best to take you through the commitment form that you will be completing for each of your children in USD 373. It will have to be completed for each child you have individually. It is not a form where you can do multiple at the same time. It's pretty short, so once you figure out the content of it, that should not be a huge problem. So I'm going to do my best to take you through this and see if we can help answer questions before you make a selection. So first thing is, at the very beginning, it talks about the two choices that you have, and that those have to be made by July 30th at midnight. And that if you are uncertain after watching this video and uncertain after reading below that I'm going to go through, that you will likely want to contact your building administrator or building counselor to help you understand a little bit better. So we do have it in English and Spanish, so hopefully you can read either one of those two options. So with that, I'm going to take you through this form. The first thing is the student's legal first name and legal last name. If you can put the legal name, that just helps us match them better in our Infinite Campus system. So if it's off, it's okay. Just helps with searching for kids as we go through the process after the survey or after the commitment form is completed. You will select your student's school, whichever school they will be attending this year. And then this graphic kind of tries to give you an easy way to understand your two choices. You have two choices, and those are: one, remote, and with that comes a lot of certainty because you know you will be in remote for the entire first semester unless otherwise approved by your building administrator. So there may be an opportunity to come back to the flexible side, but there may not be. So that's kind of the decision you have to make as a family. Like I said, there's some certainty that comes with that, as you don't have to worry about being in the flexible and things changing on you mid-semester, but there's also some disadvantages to that as well. So some of the things that you might want to understand with remote. Remote is not what you experienced last spring. It is much more rigorous. It is basically the same rigor as you would experience on site from a remote setting. So the reason it says mainly off-site is because you still may have to come in for state testing, for maybe some final exams, possibly if you have other reasons that you might need to come in for small group learning where social distancing would likely still occur. That's why it says mainly and not 100%. Daily teacher contact. You do have to make contact with at least one teacher during the week on each school day. So there will be a tracking system for that, and it'll be part of the daily log. 6 hours is required for all K-12 students and 3 for pre-K. And you can average in your weekends with that to kind of lower your daily average. It does count PE. It does count the learning time that you're taking the learning or watching the learning on a computer, but also the time you're spending working on it. But this is a state requirement. This is not something Newton came up with. It is what we need for it to count for your attendance. So that is the state requirement. There'll be a log that parents will sign off on and that teachers will keep track of. Flexible access to instruction, or asynchronous, is a word that's being used quite a bit right now. And basically, that just means you always have access to the instruction. If you miss something that they offered at like 8 a.m., it would still be available for that student to watch at any time. So that's one advantage of the remote, is it's a little more flexible as far as the learning or the access to instruction. And I indicated earlier, there is a daily attendance log, and we had decided in Newton schools that we will allow the participation in athletics and activities. So that's the remote choice. The second choice is the flexible choice. And this is based on health department guidance, and our superintendent, Mr. Van Rankin, is working with the health department to come up with how we will kind of use markers to decide when we are in the green, the yellow, or the red. And that's based on a number of different indicators that the health department will help guide us on. The unfortunate side of that is we don't know those yet, and we won't know before you have to make a choice. So unfortunately, we don't have that information. Obviously, we will do what's best for the health of our staff and students. So just know that we will base that on indicators in those 3 areas. And I wish we could give you those exact indicators, but we just can't do that at this time. And so you'll have to just make the best choice you can based on the information we have. The on-site is basically just what it says. It's full capacity. We will do social distancing where required, which may change with guidance given to us from either the county or the state. And except in classrooms, it's not possible to social distance on-site in our classrooms. And so all of our classrooms, some may be able to, depending on the class size. And so masks will be required, except for those that have a medical release from wearing a mask. So the on-site will have masks in the classrooms with the exception of those that have a medical release. Masks required except for when eating lunch, and then hourly hand sanitizing. We will also be doing the temperature checks, at least that's the guidance we have at this point. Hybrid, it's a half flexible, or it's a half flexible students on-site and half remote. So most schools will try to make that known to you as soon as we can if you choose this option as far as what those 2 days would be, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday. Obviously, we will try to work within your schedules as best we can. And they will also make sure that if family members want to be in the same cohort across the district, that we accommodate those needs. So we will work with you on those 2 days that they are on site. And then the other 3 days, they would be remote. Some students would still come in on that not off Wednesday, but the Wednesday that all students are working with remote, with the exception of a few students that may come in for Tier 3 needs, for special education needs, or for just small group learning that couldn't be offered during the other 4 days. So those Wednesdays will be used for a variety of needs across the building, but most students on Wednesdays will be working remotely, and it's not an off day, it is a work remotely day. And in the hybrid, whenever you are working remotely, you fall under the same standards as our remote only students as far as the 6 hours per day, the flexible access to instruction, the daily attendance logs, and daily contact with teachers. So they kind of have the same stipulations from the state of Kansas as far as when we're remote in the flexible model. These still apply as far as those go for attendance. Students work remotely when not on site. So we want to make it very clear that there's no off days during the week. They have 2 days on site and 3 days working remote if it's a school day. So we would give you more details on that once our calendar is finished and approved. The last option is remote, or the last area that we could go to if there's a spike would be the remote option. Basically, all of our teachers and all of our students would be working remotely during that time, similar to what we did last spring, with the difference being that we are now following these same guidelines with the daily contact, 6 hours per day, flexible access, daily attendance. So all those apply when the flexible students go to remote. The hope is that we could stay in one of these for an extended period of time, hopefully the top 2, on-site or hybrid, so that we're not constantly changing on parents. We hope to get information out each Wednesday prior to the week so that you can plan accordingly. Unfortunately, there's no guarantees on any of that because things change so quickly with COVID. So we will do our best to help you plan as a parent, knowing that there will be some flexibility required, which is why it's called the flexible model. One of the reasons we chose this over doing like some districts and going 100% remote is it still allows the opportunity when things are better to be either a hybrid or on-site. We didn't want to lock our families into remote. As we know, for many families, it's better for them to be on-site and better for our students to be on-site as much as possible. And we want to try to accommodate that within the health guidelines. So we will work closely with the health department when deciding which area we are in. And more will come on that, on how we will make that decision as we get closer to September 3rd. Again, you will have to make that decision without some of those details though. The second graphic is in Spanish. So just the same graphic I just went over in Spanish. Give us some grace on the translation. I don't know how perfect it is, but Sam and her team did the best they could to try to translate that first graphic. Then this next section, if you will, is more of the legal in-depth explanation of the 2 delivery options. So your remote and your flexible. So hopefully some of those specific questions you have will be answered here. Again, if they're not, and this video doesn't answer them, then contact your building administrator Probably the easiest way is by email, so they can get through those, as they're probably going to get many emails over the next 48 hours. So if you can email your building principal if this detailed section doesn't answer your questions. And so I'm just going to highlight a couple things. The students will do remote learning online with technology provided by the district. Every student will have access to one-to-one, and the board did approve hotspots for those families that don't have reliable internet. And so we'll be working through that, and the survey has a question on the internet that I'll talk about in just a minute. Preschool students don't have quite the load, which makes sense. We know that 6 hours will be a stretch even for our K and our other elementary students, and it'll be tough for them. But again, that's a state requirement, and we don't have any wiggle room on that. The preschool age students will be cut to 3 hours, so at least a little bit less for them. By choosing the remote option, you will be required to stay in remote learning for the full semester unless otherwise approved by a building administrator for special circumstances. And the main reason for that is if all of a sudden things get better and we try to bring all those students back, that makes it that all the work that's being done by all the buildings right now for master schedule makes it very difficult to manage for our teachers and for our administrators and counselors. So we will try to accommodate as many needs as possible. As far as we all want to be flexible no matter what we do, just knowing that this is a choice that you may not be able to back out of later in the semester if it's not possible within our master schedules. So that will be taken care of on a building by building level decision by the building administrator. So if you have more questions on the ability to move from remote to flexible or flexible to remote mid-semester, I would encourage you to contact your building principal. The flexible learning option, like I said before, will be one of the three based on our health department guidelines. Our hope is to be on site if we can do it safely and not contribute to the spread of COVID and do it within the guidelines, operational guidelines approved by our Board of Education. So we will do our best. There's some things on here like masks are required, daily temperature checks, which those come from the executive order, will happen. Now, again, the board approved these things with the understanding that things may change. This is fluid. So take that into consideration when choosing the flexible option as well. If you are concerned with it changing at some point, you may want to, again, have a conversation with your building leader. We will continue to stay informed and make decisions based on the health department guidance from Harvey County. So we will not make decisions just off a whim. We will definitely follow the guidance from our health department, knowing that it is a district Board of Education decision, superintendent decision on which of the three modes we're in. Again, special considerations may be made with the administrator as far as moving back and forth. But again, it's the same thing. If we build sections for remote and then we have flexible students changing their mind, it'll be hard for us to manage that with our teachers. And anytime you make a change mid-semester, that's hard on our teachers. So we want to try to limit that as much as possible. So please please make sure you understand the choice you're making before you do. Just like a typical school day, whether you are remote or in person, daily attendance is required. That's where that log comes in. That's where that daily teacher contact comes in. And if you don't make that contact, you will be counted absent, and truancy laws do apply. So we'll get, if you have any questions on that, our building administrators can answer those as well. But I just want to make it very clear that it's not like the spring where you can kind of come when you wanted and there was no consequences for that. You must check in daily with at least one teacher if you're remote, and you must keep track of the logs and your hours. So finally, you'll get down to the big question where it says to make sure you fully understand your decision and to contact your principal if you don't for whichever delivery selection you choose. And it must be completed for each child in your family individually. So again, you have to do this for each child in your family. You can't do it for all of them at once. So you'll select remote if you choose the left side of that diagram, the remote only students, and then the flexible learning option on the right side of the diagram above is the second choice. This next question is around internet, and one thing we want to really know is, does your internet, not only that you have it, but that you have internet capable of doing what our Canvas, our learning platform does, and Google Meets with your teachers, that it can handle that capability. And so if you need to check with your provider to make sure that you can handle that. But if there's anybody that knows that either they have really bad internet and it won't work with it because it didn't work last spring, or you just don't have internet access at all, then you would want to select no. If you think you can make it work and you can find either upgrade your internet or use somebody else's, or however you want to do that, or if you already have good enough internet, then please select yes. Obviously, the more that select yes, the better chance we have as far as our resources that we've already ordered through the board last night to accommodate all those that don't. So just something to consider when answering that question. And then the last question is based around wanting to make sure that we keep cohorts within families. So if you have a group of, let's say you have 5 kids in the district and they're all in different schools, you would want to put those 5 names here so that each building principal, when they get this survey data, knows that we have to work with the other principal in those buildings to accommodate the hybrid model and making sure they're in school or remote on the same days. So if you have multiple children in the district, this would be the spot to put those. But again, this doesn't make it where your selection applies to all those kids. You would have to complete this form with the yes or no, or the remote or flexible option for every child you have in our district. So hopefully that is clear. And with that, that is the end of this video. Again, if anything was not answered, then please reach out to your building administrator. We do want these completed, as it says at the very top, by July 30th at 11:59 p.m. so that we can begin to build what we need for remote sections and what we need for flexible sections in each of our buildings' master schedules. Thank you for your time.